Nels Coxman, a snowplow operator, and his wife Grace lead a serene life in the town of Kehoe. Their son, Carl Coxman, who is employed at the local airport, frequently visits them. Coxman is honored with the Citizen of the Year award by the community, but the evening takes a tragic turn when Carl and his friend Dante are abducted from the airport. During the kidnapping, the assailants administer a heroin overdose to Carl, leading to his death, while Dante manages to escape from the vehicle. In Denver, a drug cartel leader named Viking pressures his son Ryan to retaliate against school bullies, but Ryan, being inherently peaceful, refuses to comply. Coxman and Grace receive the heartbreaking news of Carl's death and are summoned to identify his body. The doctor attributes the cause of death to a drug overdose, but Coxman is skeptical, knowing that Carl had never struggled with addiction. Grace is devastated by the sight of her son and confronts Coxman about his emotional detachment. Overwhelmed by grief, Coxman attempts to take his own life with a shotgun, but is interrupted by Dante, who has been hiding in the workshop since the incident. Despite the shock of Carl's fate, Dante recounts the events, revealing that Carl's death was not due to an overdose. Furious at this revelation, Coxman pressures Dante for the names and whereabouts of the kidnappers, leading him to a man named Speedo. Coxman tracks Speedo to a local club and confronts him about his son's demise, but Speedo feigns ignorance and threatens him instead. In response, Coxman knocks him out.
Tell me.
Upon regaining consciousness, Speedo is tortured by Coxman, who learns that he was acting on orders from a man named Limbo. After confirming Limbo's identity, Coxman kills Speedo and disposes of his body in the river. Meanwhile, Viking is informed about Speedo's disappearance as he prepares to take Ryan to school, noting that Speedo had previously worked for him. Ryan suspects he may have done something to upset Viking, but Viking reassures him that he had no part in it. After eliminating Speedo, Coxman tracks down Limbo at his job and tortures him for information about his leader. He then shoots Limbo and disposes of the body in the river, mirroring his earlier actions. Upon returning home, Grace inquires about Carl's interests, only to feel hurt when she learns he never connected with their son. Meanwhile, in Denver, Viking's ex-wife pays him a visit to inform him that she is filing for custody of Ryan. Viking reacts with anger and offers her money to reconsider, but she firmly declines. Before he can persuade her further, Viking receives news about Limbo's disappearance. He begins to investigate his employees, reprimanding them as Ryan watches anxiously. At the same time, Coxman continues his violent rampage, taking out another gangster named Santa, who was also implicated in his son's abduction. When he returns home, he discovers that Grace has left, upset by his apparent indifference to their son's death. Feeling isolated, he seeks out his brother Brock Coxman, a former gangster, to explain his predicament. Brock reveals that they confused Carl with Dante, who had attempted to steal gold from the drug lord Viking. Having previously worked with Viking, Brock warns him that reaching out to him is futile. Coxman expresses his desire for revenge against those responsible for Carl's death, but Brock doubts his ability to kill, given his lack of experience in such matters. As they discuss the situation, Viking learns about Santa's demise. He grows suspicious, noting that a third member of his gang has gone missing in just a week, and suspects his rival, White Bull, may be behind the chaos. He reminds his team that he once collaborated with White Bull but later agreed to a pact to avoid encroaching on each other's territories. He believes they are breaching the contract and intends to teach them a lesson. Following his orders, his crew abducts a member of the rival gang and tortures him for information. When the victim refuses to talk, Viking loses his temper and shoots him, unaware that he is the only son of his adversary, White Bull. Detectives Kim Dash and John Jip from the Kehoe police also catch wind of the murder and suspect it marks the start of a turf war between the two gangs, which could disrupt the town's peace. Although Gip appears reluctant to initiate the investigation, Dash insists they must act to prevent the looming threat. At Brock's residence, he informs Coxman that Viking's real name is Trevor Calcote, and if he wants to eliminate him, he should hire a professional hitman. He mentions a man named Eskimo, and advises Coxman to pay him upfront for the job. Taking his advice, Coxman reaches out to Eskimo and brings him to town. While showing him a room in a local hotel, Coxman offers half of the agreed fee, but Eskimo mistakes him for a police officer and begins to argue. However, Coxman manages to prove his identity, and Eskimo accepts the money. He then approaches Viking, demanding the same amount in exchange for information about someone plotting to kill him. After transferring the necessary funds to his account, Eskimo reveals that Coxman is the one who wants him dead. Viking assumes it's Brock Coxman, as he had previously worked with his father and might have unresolved issues. Once Viking receives the information from Eskimo, he reprimands him for betraying his agreement with Coxman and shoots him for his disloyalty. As his men dispose of the body, Nels Coxman seeks more information about Viking or Trevor Calcody. Viking then arrives at Brock's house and offers him a ride. During the drive, he inquires about the motive behind the killings of his men and threatens Brock with death. Facing terminal rectal cancer, Brock chooses to protect his brother by taking the fall, claiming he sought revenge because their father had taken his partner from him. Perceiving him as a threat, Viking kills Brock. At the same time, White Bull, the leader of a rival gang, mourns the loss of his son. He informs his gang about an old agreement with Viking's father, but clarifies that it is now null and void since they have avenged it with his son's death. Determined to retaliate, he declares his intention to take a son in place of his own. After discovering that Eskimo was not responsible for his son's death, Coxman begins to surveil Viking's residence, where he sees Viking with his son and learns about his prep school. Following Brock's murder and realizing that White Bull had no involvement in the killings of his gang members, Viking opts to strengthen his alliance with them. To solidify this, he executes his own man, Dexter, and instructs his crew to send Dexter's head as a message to White Bull. Meanwhile, White Bull has already ordered the abduction of Ryan from his school but decides to hold off after receiving a message from Viking. The messenger delivers Dexter's head, explaining that he was responsible for White Bull's son's death and that they have punished him to honor their agreement. Grateful for the gesture, White Bull shoots the messenger, reiterating that his sole focus is on capturing Viking's son. Meanwhile, Kim learns of Carl's overdose death and his previous work with Dante at Kehoe Airport. She approaches Coxman, expressing her belief that Carl's death was not accidental and seeks his assistance in uncovering the truth. However, he declines, stating that he cannot help her now that his son is gone. Later, Coxman arrives at Ryan's school, claiming his father sent him to pick him up. Ryan, unfamiliar with him, hesitates, but ultimately agrees to go with Coxman. White Bull's men spot them outside the school and begin to pursue, but Coxman successfully escorts Ryan home. Viking learns that his son has gone missing. Before he can take action to locate him, his wife reappears and confronts him about taking Ryan without her consent. He explains the situation regarding Ryan's kidnapping, but reassures her that a call with ransom demands will come, and he is confident he will bring their son back safely. Meanwhile, White Bull's crew receives a message on Dexter's phone from a gang member indicating that he is staying at a hotel. They quickly track him down and eliminate him. White Bull and his team head to a ski resort in Kehoe to monitor Viking and his crew. At the same time, Coxman returns home with Ryan and offers to make him lunch. When Ryan inquires about his family, Coxman tells him he has none. He treats Ryan kindly, suggesting he can sleep in Carl's room after admitting he once had a son who no longer lives with him. Coxman even reads a story to Ryan and offers him a ride on his snowplow while they wait for their next mission. The gang members are enjoying their stay at the resort, but White Bull is preoccupied with thoughts of his son and vows to seek revenge. Back in Denver, Viking's men bring in a school janitor who reveals that Coxman is the one who took Ryan. Viking realizes he misidentified the names. It wasn't Brock, but someone else trying to deceive him. Coxman contacts Viking, instructing him to come alone to retrieve his son. Viking agrees, but orders his team to head to Kehoe. They raid Coxman's house but find no one, as Coxman has taken Ryan out for a ride on his snowplow. They encounter a police car, and Coxman introduces Ryan as his nephew. During their conversation, Jip mentions seeing numerous cars at Coxman's house, prompting Coxman to realize that Viking has arrived. While searching the house, they discover a company name from one of the photographs and decide to head there in hopes of finding Ryan. As Viking and his crew set out, one of his men betrays them by informing White Bull about their plans. Coxman takes aim at their vehicles, intending to shoot Viking, but Ryan intervenes. He swiftly pulls Coxman back inside, instructing him to wait there until he returns to pick him up. Coxman makes another attempt to shoot Viking but is thwarted and captured by Viking's men, who bring him before their leader. Viking interrogates him about Ryan, but just as Coxman is about to speak, White Bull and his gang arrive, opening fire. A fierce battle erupts between the two factions, resulting in heavy casualties on both sides. Viking attempts to escape, but Coxman corners him in his car while White Bull fires at him. As White Bull departs to resume his duties, he climbs into the truck with Coxman. The police arrive just in time to find Viking moments before his demise, while Ryan makes his escape in a snowplow. White Bull feels a sense of satisfaction with Coxman, realizing he is not a criminal. He lowers his weapon, and they drive off, just as the last surviving gang member parachutes down and inadvertently lands in front of them, meeting his end under the plow.